Chris Niedermeier is the former U.S. Senate Chief of Staff, former Deputy Director at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So we just got through a pretty rancorous week or couple of weeks. And in a couple of months, we're going to do it all over again?
You know, John, you're right. It could be more of the same. We're getting closer and closer to next year's election. Obama and the Democrats feel that the Republicans in the House gave them a Christmas gift with the quagmire this week and all the delay that happened. And you still have the same scenario in Washington. You still have a handful of Tea Party Republicans in the House that don't want to come into the fold with John Boehner's efforts. And you now have Obama, who used the bully pulpit a little bit this week with the people behind him, more campaigning than some people would like to see, but it worked. At least they feel it worked, and now they feel they've been handed a gift of this issue of middle class versus wealthy taxes.
On Monday, President Obama is meeting with a couple of leaders of the European Union to talk about the crisis and offer some guidance. The backdrop for this meeting? The Congressional Supercommittee's failure to agree on a plan to get our own fiscal house in order. Chris Niedermeier is a former Deputy Director at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, knows a lot about how the markets work and how it gets affected by this kind of thing in Washington. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of leadership at either end of Pennsylvania Avenue on trying to get our fiscal house in order.
You know, there really isn't, John, and I think the frustration of the American public is at an all-time. Congress has a 9% support rating right now, and what we're seeing is not only the effect of the crisis in Europe affecting the United States, but we're seeing now the failure of the Supercommittee and how that can affect the markets.
Sequestration, of course, being what happens if there's not an agreement reached here for the Supercommittee. Chris Niedermeier is a former U.S. Senate Chief of Staff and served as Deputy Director at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Certainly have seen some interesting things in the past in both of those positions. Chris, what's the game plan here? I mean, high stakes, but either side, what's in it for the posturing on both sides at this moment?
Well, there's only 2 weeks left, as you know, for the Supercommittee to reach a conclusion if they're going to meet the deadline. It seems that President Obama set a new tone when he went out on the campaign trail recently on his jobs program, trying to paint Congress as a do-nothing Congress. So there is some fear that, given the fact that the full committee hasn't met recently and that Chuck Schumer is saying that they may not reach a conclusion, that both sides will try to point fingers at each other and then wait until the next year's election to resolve the matter.
Does it help Obama if there is no agreement and we go into this stage of sequestration that Senator McCain was talking about?
I don't think it helps either side. He's the commander-in-chief, and he needs to get this economy moving again. If the committee doesn't reach a conclusion, then the options are the credit rating of the country could go down, the markets could take a dive. Already there's an international economic crisis. People work to the tune of 9%. So if those circumstances don't change between now and next November, I think both members of Congress and the President will be in the tank. We were able to use the Federal Reserve to help us pump up our banks. And I think one of the roles that President Obama wants to have on Monday is to try to encourage some of the European leadership and the EU leadership to try to perhaps buy up some of this high-risk debt that is dragging down the banks.